name's Felicia Rose, and this is the Scars and Stillness podcast. Thank you for coming back for episode 6. As always, I like to do a trigger warning for my episodes. Just, with Scars and Stillness, we talk about trauma and transformation, and so almost everything that we talk about is pretty heavy. So just make sure that you're checking in with yourself and you're putting yourself first. Yeah. So before we get into episode 6, I just want to thank everyone for your patience with me and your grace. Episode 6 is coming out a little bit late. Normally I like to upload or, put it on Spotify on Tuesdays, and the week kind of got away from me. So it's been a bit of a busy week, and sometimes it's important to just have some unplugged time to just recenter, and that's kind of what I did. But anyways, just thank you for your grace, and sorry again that it's late. So episode 6, as always, I have my notes over here on my computer, just again so I can make sure that I'm hitting all the key points that I want to talk about today. So if I pause for any moment or I look away, that's why. Okay, let's get into it. So last week's episode, we talked about the chaos after freedom in episode 5. So episode 6 today is the silence after survival. We talked about this a little bit in episode 5 because it kind of it intertwines together. But I just wanted to have a separate episode for this because the silence after survival really is it's important, and it's a part of our healing journey that deserves to be talked about as well. So last time in episode 5 I shared about the spiral, the rebellious phase, and just the chaos and chaos after freedom, like the title. So this is more about kind of the next step. What happens after, that rebellious phase is kind of past us. So that's why this is called the silence after survival. Because it's true. It's literally how this feels. So, as mentioned in episode 5, I went through my rebellious phase for a couple of years, from fall of 2014 to around Christmas time of 2016. And during that time, obviously I was a single mom and I still had that freedom. And I had already mentioned in episode 5 that I had felt like, when the chaos was gone and the world around me was quiet was when I had noticed that I was completely and totally and utterly hollow and alone. But when I completely turned my back on the partying and all the people from that life, my world was silent. I was no longer allowing those people to be around me. And in the start of my sobriety, I really wasn't allowing anyone to be around me at all. So I really was alone. It was me and my kid. And I lived with my mom at the time, so she was a part of that. But I really didn't talk to anybody. I just focused on working and, being a parent to my kid, which was great. And I felt like it was really something that was needed at that time. But being the grown person and, as a mom and a dad, if there are any single dads that watch this, but as the parent, we're forever we're kind of just going through the motions, right? So we wake up, we take care of our kids, we make breakfast, we do their routine. We know the routine of the day. And then obviously if we work, we have to do that too. But it's very rare during the waking hours that the single parent has any time to themselves at all. So I think through just the busyness of the day, it kind of kept my brain distracted from life. You know what I mean? And how I was actually feeling. But for me, bedtime was the hardest. So, when we did, tuck-ins and bedtime stories and nighttime kisses and, cuddles or whatever, and then it was time for my little one to go to sleep, and then I was in my room by myself after 8 p.m. or 7:30 or whatever time she went to sleep. That was when it was really hard. That was when the silence was really loud, um, for me, was because I just felt completely alone, and I felt like it was more magnified sober. I didn't have, um wasn't drinking, I don't smoke pot. I wasn't doing anything to kind of, like, muddy or, fog my perception of things. It was just me and the rawness of the pain, and it was really difficult. So, I mean, as mentioned in the last episode, my first love and I, we tried to reconnect after I first left my abusive relationship. Um, and I talked about like our shared grief and just trying to rebuild that relationship. And it was something that we couldn't do. Like it was something that he had realized was too painful for him. Um, well, somewhere in between the time of all of that, we did try to make it work. You know what I mean? Like we had realized that at first, and then however many months had went by and we were like, well, let's try this again. Um, and the last time I had spent with him, we completely ended our relationship, like completely ended our relationship based off of a misunderstanding that we realized 8, 9 years later that it was this giant misunderstanding that basically ruined everything. I had it in my head that um, he felt a certain type of way, and then he had it in his head that I felt a certain type of way. And so, because we have both had, you know, been through pain and trauma, we didn't communicate the way that we should have, and we just walled each other out. And then we didn't talk for 8 years. Literally. I just stopped talking to him and he stopped talking to me, and we didn't ever have closure or anything. I literally just thought that he hated me and he had moved on. He chose someone else. And that was kind of that. So that having the absence of my first love was really hard in the midst of the silence with my survival, because as mentioned in episode 5, I mean, I clung to that. I clung to the idea of my first love because, he was my first love, and I feel like I should have listened to him from the beginning and not really got into that abusive relationship, and I did. And so I hung on to the idea of that if I was ever free from that person, that, things would work out between me and him and we would have you know, our forever, our happily ever after or whatever. And it didn't work out that way because life isn't a fairy tale, and pain is real and trauma is real and misunderstandings happen. Literally looking back on that situation as a grown person, an older grown person, not such a young adult, is that whole situation, a lot of heartache would have been completely like erased if we would have just communicated with each other like adults instead of blocking and closing each other's out based on opinions or thoughts that we thought was going on with the other person. Um, and it's just crazy to think that like a misunderstanding on both sides ended things with us. And so much had happened in those 8 years for me and for him, you know? And yeah, it's just kind of funny that we ended up finding our way backs to each other. Backs. We found our way back to each other after, the whole thing. Yeah. But anyways, moving on, is that the silence with being a single parent um was really heavy, especially after um that little piece of hope was removed from me. I was like, "Oh, okay, well, I really am alone. My first love don't love me anymore," because I really did believe inside myself that he didn't love me. He didn't care about me. he chose someone else over me, and I was just nothing. I was nothing, and so I really was alone. And then I that was really hard. Like, that was really hard, realizing that we were free from abuse was great, but then also realizing that, like, "Okay, I'm completely alone." That was hard. I mean, I didn't have that second parent. I didn't have someone to bounce ideas off of, or, you know, ask them if I'm doing the right thing, or if like, it especially as a first-time parent, like, we have no idea what we're doing. And I think it's funny, like, looking at kids now, like, my daughter is, like, moving on 13 right now, a teenager, and it's funny that, like, these kids think that we just know everything and we have everything, like, all figured out and all together, when really we're just learning as we go, Like, they're growing up and we're essentially growing up at the same time, and, like, just because we're parents doesn't mean that we know everything or we have everything figured out. And it's harder as a single parent because you really don't have that other parent to support you, or to support the child, or to switch out if you feel like you're too much is happening at that time and you need a break. You don't have that. You don't have a break. You don't have someone to be there to pick you up, or the other, like, pick up the kid. Like, it's just you. And I remember when my daughter was really little, tiny, um she had severe separation anxiety with me, like, to the point where, like, I couldn't even use the bathroom with the door closed without her having, like, a complete, like, panicking meltdown, like, putting her little fingers under the door and just, like, hyperventilate crying, um, which caused a lot of stress for me, obviously, because I was like, it would freak me out when she would get like that, and I, wouldn't want her to be scared or freaked out. And I remember I worked with her doctors a lot during that time, especially because I was like, what is happening? Why is this happening?" And even though she was so little when I had left my abuser, she was still a child of abuse, a little baby of abuse. And actually, little ones, um, get more traumatized than older ones, because their brains are still, they're still developing and forming, and so abuse sticks to them a lot, like, more in their subconscious mind, which I did not know until I was, like, working with her doctors about it, um, because, yeah, she had severe, separation anxiety with me. She was very clingy to me, um, which obviously made things a little bit challenging when it came to anything. Like, if I had to go to work, it was a whole ordeal, having to just, like, try to comfort her through the process, and then having the babysitter be really understanding and comfort her through the process, because even after I would leave, it would be probably 20 to 30 minutes where she was just so upset, that the babysitter would have to kind of soothe her and comfort her, and then eventually, of course, she would calm down and things would be okay. But that was, like, a regular thing, and it was really rough. It was really hard to, like, deal with that on a regular basis. And then, of course, her being so little, like, we just wanna be the best parents that we are, and then not mess our kids up, and then when they act like they already have, like, little baby pains and stuff going on, that kinda breaks you as a parent, so it made it really heavy. It was a big weight to carry for me, and not having that other person for support. Um, I think the next thing for me was just resentment, and feeling, um, like, trapped with my life. I feel like the silence of my life kind of forced me to face my life. It forced me to face, like, resentment that I held towards my abuser. I felt like he completely trapped me in a situation and then left. Because, as mentioned before, like, he wasn't around. He wasn't involved in raising his child at all. Like, even to this day, he doesn't know anything about her. Like, he doesn't know anything about her. You have memories of being around your kid from when she was 2 and 1 and newborn, like, not even for a prolonged period of time, off and on for however long, and you think that that makes you a dad? Give me a break. You don't even deserve the title of a dad. You don't know anything about her. Literally anything about her. Which, of course, as a parent, like, it makes me have my claws out because I'm like, "You" like, some parents don't deserve to be parents. They don't deserve to have the title as a dad or a mom when they have not done anything in any way to support that child. And, even now, like as mentioned, my kid is she's she's pushing 13, and there's a lot of, um there's a lot of pain there, a lot of, like, deep-seated trauma there that she has with her bio dad because, the older she gets, the more she realizes, like, "Wow, he was a total piece of garbage, and why? What did I do to deserve a dad who was so bad to me? Who was so bad to me?" And at those times when she was little, and I was dealing with, like, the separation anxiety with her. Um, she had, like, behavioral issues as well, where, like, if she got upset, she would, like, pull on her hair, rip parts of her hair out, or she would, like, grab her cheeks and scratch her cheeks. And I remember asking the doctor about it because it freaked me out. I'm like, "Oh my goodness, is she gonna be okay?" And the doctor had always mentioned that that was just her, like, self-soothing. That was, like, her way of self-soothing, and he had mentioned at the time that that just comes from, just trauma from, being a witness to abuse at such an early age. She had some kind of subconscious trauma there where that was her thing, her self-regulating was to, rip on her hair or scratch her face or whatever the case may be, and that was always really hard for me, and it also made me even more mad at him that I felt like I had so much unchecked trauma from him, and now I'm raising this little person who is, like, pure and good and beautiful and doesn't deserve any kind of bad from anyone. And she's dealing with these things that you literally know nothing about, you don't care about, you know what I mean? And during those times, like, as I mentioned in episode 5, he would be in and out, you know what I mean? Like, he would have these phases where he would be clean for 5 seconds and then want his family back, just to turn around and leave again. And when she was, like, little, um I'm not gonna say it didn't affect her because of course it did. So even subconsciously, even if she didn't even realize it, it was affecting her. You know what I mean? Like, it was chipping away at her abandonment. I mean, I know that my kid has abandonment issues or feeling like she's not good enough, because of that. Because her bio dad has literally showed up and left many, 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 many times. So I know that she has abandonment issues just like I do because the same things happened to me when I mean, even as a grown up, like, you know what I mean? Like, people always leave. Like, I really do believe that because that's happened my whole life. And unfortunately, I'm sure my daughter also feels similar to that because that has happened to her by him. You know what I mean? And then, but yeah, my whole point with that was like when he would be in and out, um, he would just leave catastrophe. It would just be a whole explosion of emotions were left behind. Because even as a little one, like, I know that my daughter, she really wanted her daddy. Like, she really wanted a daddy to be there and to love her like a dad's supposed to, and he was so wrapped up in being a psycho and an addict that he was so in and out that when he did leave, I was left to pick up all the pieces of the life that he broke again, and so I had these just I was so filled with rage and resentment that I was like, I was stuck here to deal with this, to heal myself and heal my daughter from him. Um, and I was just frustrated. I was frustrated at everything. I was frustrated that, um, that things didn't work out with my first love, and that, as mentioned in the last episode, that, like, we had gotten pregnant and that our baby died, and I was frustrated that my abuser kind of forced me into the life that I was in, and I was mad, and I felt trapped by him, and I felt like I couldn't escape it, and then I was kind of left with a bunch of grief for the life that I lost, but then I also had, like, I had guilt. I had guilt too. I had guilt for feeling that way. I felt guilty for feeling trapped and, like, grieving the life that I lost because I wanted to be the best mom that I could be, and I knew that it wasn't her fault. But at the same time, I was just so frustrated that my abuser was her dad because she deserved a lot better than that. She deserved a lot better, and she still does. She still deserves a lot better than having a biological dad who's a total piece of crap, who is still just non-existent. He's a non-existent parent, and I'm sure, like, he used to, like, if anyone would ask him about it, I was this terrible baby mama who would just keep my kid away from him because, I'm the problem. It had nothing to do with him. Of course not. Um, but, the older that she gets, the more she sees through it. The older that she gets, she realizes that, like, wow, he's crappy. He's not a dad. He doesn't even know my favorite color. He doesn't know my friends. He doesn't know my brother's middle name. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the older that she's gotten, she's figured it out that, like, oh, wow, my mom's not keeping me away from anybody. Like, these people don't even reach out to me. These people don't even, you know what I mean? Like, they don't try to know me or try to care. And it's not even just like that for just him. Like, his whole family is the exact same way, where it's like, I've had the same phone number for years, years and years and years, and then we always get the, well, the door swings both ways. Yeah, you're right. The door does swing both ways, but why would I go out of my way to ensure that you guys have a relationship with my daughter when you've never tried? You know what I mean? Like, they have these moments where they try to have relationships with my daughter for short periods of time, and then that's it, you know? And then same thing, I've never kept my kid away from her biological dad, never kept my kid away from his family. Um, I've never had to keep her away from them because they just choose to themselves. And which is really sad, but I also feel like I would absolutely keep my daughter away from her dad if he was unsafe, completely. Like, there has been times where he's reached out, after not reaching out to me for 5 years or however long, and wants to be a dad again, which is laughable, I know, um, where I'm like, "Nope." Like, I don't care. I'm not gonna fall for it again because 'cause it's been going on for 12, almost 13 years. Like, this is nothing new. Your pattern is nothing new. The fact that, like, this is an ongoing thing, if I feel like you're abusive or horrible or, using drugs or being a liar and a narcissist, like, you have no business being around us. You have no business being around my daughter anyway. And also, she has the right to decide if she wants him or any of them in her life for that matter. And she's kind of reached a point where I think that she's finally realized that, like, it's their loss, you know? And, it's just my job as a mom and a parent to just protect and love and nurture, but also, like, it's important for me to teach my kids that, like, you need to demand respect from people. Like, you are worthy of love. You are worthy of respect. You do not have to settle. You do not have to get small or shrink yourself down or minimize who you are for love. You deserve the absolute best because you are an absolute treasure. And I think that she's finally getting to a point where she's realizing, like, my mom's right. I am a treasure. I deserve the best. I don't have to put this back on me. There's nothing wrong with me. It's on them. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. Um, but yeah, sorry for that kind of little, like, snowball right there, but yeah, I just kind of grew and I grew in resentment and just feeling so frustrated. Um, and we were, me and my kid, like, as mentioned, like, I had my kid young, and so we were kind of growing up together, which has created us to have, like, this closeness now, because she's my firstborn, and, um, you know, parenting my firstborn versus my other kids has been very different because the world in which we lived in was different both, all the times. The world that my oldest daughter and I were in at that time was not a safe world at all, and then trying to find ourselves from from the fire and, like rebirth ourselves from the ashes, we did together, just me and her hand in hand. And so it just created kind of like a closeness with each other, which I actually think is pretty cool. Like we're still working through everything every day. Like she still has trauma, I still have trauma, we're human. And it's important for us to just kind of always be gentle with those parts of ourselves because it's not our fault. It's their fault. It's just, it's ours to carry now that we have to deal with, which is really hard. But one of my other points on here is why silence hurts survivors. So some of the things I had put was survivors are conditioned to chaos. Silence feels foreign and unbearable. So that even goes all the way back. That's not even just the last couple of episodes. That goes all the way back, even back to childhood trauma. Silence kind of has a way of like weaving its way in. So for me, like even as a little girl, I hated silence. It told me when things were silent that something bad was happening, even as a child, because I was so used to the loudness and the chaos of life that silence felt unsafe. So being now in a safe environment, I'm building a safe home now for me and my kid. Silence was hard. Like it was hard to just you're put in this position where you got to face it. You have to face life. You have to, face the music and quiet. It brings up that grief. It brings up the loss and the emptiness and the loneliness. It's just hard. And then you feel even more alone or unheard or unseen, and then you start feeling these feelings of like maybe I was never enough, maybe I deserved the things that I'd been through. And so for me, instead of peace, silence didn't bring peace for me, it mirrored pain. So that was a whole thing that I had to work through as well. And I was trying to do it all sober. So, like, that was really hard. That was hard to deal with that. But this episode, it's not obviously not going to be as long as the other ones, but it felt really important for me to just add this in. If anyone has ever if anyone's ever felt more alone in freedom than in chaos, you're not broken. It's a part of it, and it's a really hard part of it. It really is. You're not failing. Um, I think it's just another one of those pieces that we have to kind of put together before we can move forward in life after abuse and addiction. It's it's just hard, and I think that things will never be normal after we've had these traumatic experiences. I think our lives will always kind of change a little bit. And so we change. We change. We're not the same people that we were before these things happen to us, and then that's okay. It's okay. But I think just understanding and reflecting on that, and realizing that this is a part of it. Silence with survival is a part of it, and I'm sure there are a lot of other people who feel like that, who feel like silence isn't peace, man. It mirrors pain. I think eventually when you get to a point of healing where enough time has passed, I think eventually you can make peace with silence. That's kind of where I'm at now, where it's been so many years of living this life that I still don't like the silence. I still don't like the silence. I will still sleep with music or a movie on. Um, I find peace with a little bit of noise, you know. I still don't like complete silence, but I'm also not afraid of it anymore either. Like when my house is completely quiet and when I wake up early in the morning, get the kids up and ready, take them to school, and then when I'm home early and everyone else that lives here is still sleeping and it's completely silent, It's a little bit nerve-wracking that the house is completely silent, but there's also some peace in it. You know, I I do my Bible studies first thing in the morning every morning. Like, I want to have time with God first thing in the morning before anything else. And doing that, I feel like allows me to um put him first and then everything else next. And so having the silence there for me is kind of cool because I feel like it's allowing me to have just complete and total focus on him. No other outside distractions. But I think that again, like that takes time. Like feeling not so alone in silence, or you know what I mean? I think that that's just a part of time and healing and all the things. But yeah, I wrote another little thing here. I had put silence is the place where all the grief you've carried finally surfaces. And as painful as it is, silence is also where healing begins. And I completely agree with that. When I was going through my rebellious phase, I was always like drinking or numbing myself out or, fogging my perception on things. It was only when I completely got sober and faced the silence and faced everything that I felt like I was starting to allow myself to heal. And it sucks. It's not fun. But just know that you're not alone in this. There's tons of us who have been there, who've been through this too. Um, and I see you and you're enough and it's gonna be okay. Thank you guys so much for coming and listening to me for this episode. I genuinely appreciate it, and I'm hoping that even one person has been, helped by hearing me on my podcast or inspired in any way. If you want to hear more or see more of my content, please feel free to follow me on my other socials if that's something that you're interested in. And I hope to see you guys next week for episode 7. Take care.